Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. I'm Matt Perkins, joined as always by BadgerBlitz.com publisher and editor-in-chief, John McNamara. Great to see you as always, buddy.
Good to see you too, Matt.
So it is portal season now. We will get into the portal here in just a minute, but obviously the biggest news coming out of Madison is the all but officially confirmed nomination of Jeff Grimes to be the offensive coordinator in Madison. I don't think they've made a public announcement yet, but it seems that he's changed his Twitter bio. So that's good enough for me as far as I'm concerned. Jeff Grimes comes over from Kansas, previously at Baylor, to head up the Wisconsin offense after the departure of Phil Longo. John, let's just go from here. I don't think this was the first name on any of our lists, but here we are. How do you feel about this hire, and how should Badger fans feel about this hire?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question right now, right? Is everyone's trying to evaluate, how Jeff Grimes is going to do, what he's going to bring to the table. I think just at a complete surface level, it is a return to what has made Wisconsin successful in the past. I don't think you're ever going to see the 3 yards in a cloud of dust and just pounding the football. But, just from message boards and feedback from people, what largely has come up is a power spread and getting Wisconsin to something that resembles that. And I think Jeff Grimes is an avenue towards that right now. Will he have success? Won't he have success? I think a lot of that is obviously to be determined. But for what the feedback has been from fans, it seems like he is a person that can get you back to what many believe will get Wisconsin back on track on the offensive side of the ball.
Obviously, on the offensive side of the ball, they're also going to have to hire a quarterbacks coach because Grimes is not a quarterbacks coach, and they're going to need to have a dedicated quarterbacks coach. That hire is, I don't want to say as consequential as the offensive coordinator, but it's pretty darn consequential. Where do you think they're leaning right now? We've heard names like Chris Wenke bandied about, the Kirk Campbell, the former quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator at Michigan. How do you feel like this shakes out at the quarterback coach?
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about this, and Luke Fickell talked about that on Wednesday at signing day. Is it could be two people, and that kind of opened the door to a lot of different ideas. And obviously you saw that first piece land with Grimes because his background is obviously as an offensive line coach, and there's play calling as well, obviously. So he will, assume the coordinator title, but now you're going to presumably bring in a quarterbacks coach, and I think that piece is more connected to the recruiting and potentially more connected to the transfer portal, and someone obviously who's going to work very closely with Jeff Grimes. But I think that's also very appealing to, again, portal guys and then guys in that 2026 class and beyond of not only do we have a coordinator, but we have a dedicated quarterbacks coach to what is obviously the most important position on the football field. So I like that. I like that approach. I think that's something good that Luke Fickell's doing. But, obviously those two are going to have to work pretty hand in hand with each other moving forward. And that begs the question of, is this someone who Grimes has signed off on, or is this just someone that Luke Fickell has signed off on and told these two that they're going to have to work together?
Do you imagine that Grimes and Fick will be in more lockstep than Fick and Longo were?
They're going to have to be. And I would say, yeah. I think, the big piece of that hire is, can I work with this guy day to day? And I can't really, speak to exactly what that was like, but I from the people that you talk to, I don't know that if that was the best working relationship, not only with Longo and Fickell, but Longo and the rest of that offensive staff. I don't know if it was very collaborative. I think it was very Phil Longo, and this is what I do, and this is how I do it. And I think that had to have been one of the things that Luke Fickell was looking towards is, I got to bring a guy in who is going to work with the current coaching staff that I have in place, guys that I like, and someone that I'm going to have to work with day to day, and he's going to have to do the things that I want to do at Wisconsin. So I think that was likely a big piece to this hire and why Jeff Grimes is here.
Does Jeff Grimes coach a position group? Because Wisconsin already has two offensive line coaches.
I think I would imagine the title will be offensive coordinator. I mean, maybe offensive coordinator / run game coordinator. And then your quarterback's coach potentially carries the title of passing game coordinator. So I don't see him carrying a position coach. I think he will just carry the title of offensive coordinator. That's my assumption.
Interesting. That'll be the first time in a long time that has happened, I think, if ever, at Wisconsin. Because, I mean, I feel like the offensive coordinator has always also been a position coach going back. Brian White was a running backs coach. Chris was obviously a tight ends coach and a quarterbacks coach. So I'm curious to see how that sort of all plays out. And then if there are any dominoes that fall within the rest of the staff, because if they hire a quarterback, that adds then another on the field coach, right? And so are they already at the max with Rabach?
Yeah, so you can do the on-field coach as much as you need to. It's who can you send on the road. So, I mean, that might have been the appeal to Grimes coming to this staff is I might not play a large role in on the road recruiting. That might fall on the quarterback's coach. So, again, those specifics kind of haven't been ironed out just yet, but that's kind of what I would anticipate is, again, that quarterback's coach largely doing, the development of that position group, and then the bulk of the recruiting. Obviously, Grimes is going to be a part of that, but that's kind of what I would anticipate.
Well, whoever the new quarterbacks coach is going to have a battle on their hands, especially with Tyler Van Dyke heading to the portal. I do think that the hiring of Jeff Grimes personally I gives Wisconsin a much better chance to retain Mabry Matoyer. Grimes recruited him pretty darn hard when Grimes was still at Baylor. He had offered, I think, Matoyer as a freshman or sophomore. Matoyer visited Baylor for game day visits going back to his freshman or sophomore year in high school. So they obviously have some relationship there already. So if Matoyer does stay, you're looking at a quarterback room that's probably looking to add some sort of upperclassman transfer to go along with Carter Smith, Mabry Matoyer, and Braden Locke. Then whoever that quarterback is, though, that they are attaining or trying to attain has been played very close to the vest. John, let's do some reckless speculation. Who do you think Wisconsin likes here in the portal? Or maybe a better way to frame the question is, who do you think is a fit of the guys that are in the portal right now?
That's a good question, Matt. And I went down that list of, the guys who are currently in the portal right now. I think, by early indications, and obviously there's a lot of time for things to change, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be as deep and as talented a pool of quarterbacks that it's been in the last two cycles where, Wisconsin was able to get a guy like, Tanner Mordecai, who wasn't necessarily a top tier guy. And then obviously Tyler Van Dyke last cycle, who wasn't necessarily a top tier guy. Right now, Miller Moss, Dylan Gabriel, those are maybe the two top quarterbacks that are out there.
Not Dylan Gabriel.
Or did I say Dylan Gabriel? I'm sorry. The guy from Oklahoma. These names are kind of who did I say? Gabriel?
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel used to be at Oklahoma. He's the starting quarterback at Oregon now in his last year of eligibility.
He is not in the portal. I don't want to report that. My apologies.
That would be something, going into the playoff as number one and be like, I'm in the portal now. That would be something that I don't think any of us would have seen before. I'm trying to remember who the name. Now I'm blanking on this, John, and I feel very embarrassed that.
Okay, let's just say Miller Moss then. And obviously, that's a guy.
Jackson Arnold is the name you're looking for.
Jackson Arnold. I'm sorry. I'm at portal overload right now. I apologize. And the portal's only been open for 2 days. So obviously I think there's going to be more names going out there. And with these top tier guys, they're going to go out with a short list, if not the school that they're going to. So, just because a guy isn't in yet doesn't mean he's not going to eventually be there. But it's tough to say. I think though, and this is what I put in the den, is that who they hire at quarterback's coach will be instrumental in the guy that they land in the portal. And I think just kind of assuming that you can't roll back the quarterback room from last year, right? I mean, that's just not an option. So they have to go through the portal. And I think whoever they bring in at that coaching spot will be instrumental in connecting the dots to who that person's going to be.
So the Badgers have already had 17 players enter the portal, including two quarterbacks, Tyler Van Dyke and Cole LaCrue being the first person to enter the portal this season. As of this morning, I think Riley Nowakowski is the latest portal entry. But just going down the list, James Thompson, James Duran, Gavin Lom, Hank Weber, Manny Mullins, Nate White, Trech Kekahuna, Braden Moore, Jace Arnold, Kurt Neal, Justin Taylor, Jonas Duclino, Mari Snowden, and Leon Lowry round out that list. John, who's the biggest loss for the Badgers?
Just because of the position he plays, I think James Thompson, and you saw that he goes in the portal, and he's got I think Illinois was there, Auburn was there, Cal was there. These defensive linemen, not to say like they're smart for going out, but they're going to they're overvalued, and that's not a knock on anyone who goes out. It's a premium position, and people overpay for that. And look, a guy like James Thompson takes advantage of it. And Wisconsin had that last year with, Gio Paez and Rodis Johnson. I think Thompson is probably a little cut above those two, but he's not a world beater, right? I mean, he's not a guaranteed NFL guy.
Well, especially coming off of his injury.
Right. So I think that's probably the biggest loss. People will say Trech. I guess I'm not as high on Trech as a lot of other people are. I think he's obviously very talented, but I think there's things that he needed to work on. And I think, he'll go somewhere, he'll play at a high level, but I don't know if that's a big of a loss considering you have Will Pauling there, considering you have KBJ coming back, considering that the slot position might not be as important in this new offense moving forward. So, it's for me, it's defensive line. It's James Thompson. They would have loved to have him come back, I would assume. But look, a 6-year guy, he's seen a lot, done a lot in Madison, and maybe he wants to capitalize on that last year, different scenery, bigger paycheck potentially. We'll see what happens with him. But to me, that's the biggest loss so far for Wisconsin.
It's James Thompson for me as well, with Trech probably coming in at number 2. We talked last week about the entire 2023 defensive back class being gone from the portal now, which is still like kind of crazy to think about. But the Badgers have been offering not as many guys as left in the portal. I think I counted this morning, they've got 9 offers out there now. But John, what they seem to be really going after now is bigger edge players. They've got a couple guys set to come on campus this weekend, but you look at guys like Mason Rieger from Louisville, Kazim Moore out of Elon, Corey Walker from Western Michigan, Nathan Johnson out of App State. All of these guys carry a bigger size than most of the edge players that are on the Wisconsin roster.
Yeah, and that was notable too from Luke Fickell talking on Wednesday at signing day. He talked a lot about the kind of the status of the program, more so not more so, but in addition to the guys who signed, but getting bigger at that edge position, and you can kind of draw conclusions of what that might look like. Is that guy someone who's standing up with 3 defensive linemen alongside of him and maybe puts his hand down at times? Is it maybe more of a forefront moving forward? Do they get to that 3-3-5 with, a guy like these big, if you look at the offers, it's largely 6'4", 6'5", 260. And to me, that's not a defensive end. That's a guy, that jumbo outside linebacker, maybe in the mold of Aaron Witt or Ernest Willer or Jalen Williams. Luke Fickell said it, we just have to get bigger at that position. And the portal offers so far would certainly indicate that.
That'll be an interesting position to look at going forward, as well as obviously defensive tackle. They've offered David Blay out of Louisiana Tech, who had a really nice season down there this year. I think some of the other interesting names that they've offered a pair of players from Miami of Ohio. Between that and flipping the corner from Miami of Ohio, Wisconsin must be hated in Oxford right now because Wisconsin seems to be rating them for talent. Rayon Strader, Javon Tracy, the 2 players, cornerback and wide receiver, respectively. Obviously with all the portal exodus of the defensive back room, they need to target some DBs between Strader and then also Matthew Traynor out of Richmond. What do you think they're going to do here? Because, looking at the preliminary depth chart that you put out last week, they're starting to get a little thin at defensive back. I'm looking at that nickel corner position. I'm like, oh man, like, they're going to need to bulk up there as well if they're going to try to run this 3-3-5.
Yeah, I just kind of ran out of bodies. If you're on the Den, because I always like depth charts, and in the portal era,
I love depth charts.
I do too, and I like looking ahead. But in the portal era, you can't really look ahead beyond a week or two. But I just kind of basically took the last depth chart and put guys in there from the last depth chart and who might be able to fill those places. And like I said, I kind of ran out of cornerbacks because there just aren't that many on the current roster. So, at that nickel spot, I think I had Owen Arnett, who was listed, he's been listed in that role. He's been listed at safety. Emilio Agard is a potential there. But I put Jameer Scott there as an early enrollee just because, again, they don't have a lot of scholarship guys on the roster right now. That'll change in a month. And that's why, like you talked about, Matt, some of the offers that you've seen so far, like a Strader, they offered that trainer guy. He's probably more of a safety, but potentially a nickel guy. That's an area of need now because of what's happened in the portal so far. But that defense is going to need a lot of work, and the bulk of the offers so far have been on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, also Alex Mitchell from UT Chattanooga, who I think is coming up to take a visit this weekend. I didn't expect them to go as hard as for off-ball linebackers this year. Not to say that they're just set with Allegro and Curtis and Jancy and, Gauthier, I think, was the other guy in your two deep there. But it doesn't seem like as big of a position of need maybe at the moment.
I would agree there, but you look up and down this roster, they can improve everywhere. I don't know that there's any spot that you just say we're good. Obviously, you have a budget and you need to allocate funds. And I think there are places better served. You look at inside linebacker, probably running back is not the top of our needs. But if a guy checks out, he makes sense and he wants to come to Wisconsin, there's no spot that you look at and said, we feel great about this position moving forward. Again, quarterback, defensive line, corner, defensive back as a whole, likely grade a lot higher, but I think they'll just take help wherever they can get it. And look, they might be adding close to 20 guys to the portal just to get up to that 85. There's a lot of room to work with right now.
I think that maybe offensive line is the one position that they won't target in the portal, but they've also said that from the beginning. They want specifically the offensive line to completely be built through recruiting. So I think that is probably the one position we won't see many, if any, offers.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's when they brought in Leighton Nelson in the last cycle. It wasn't a definitive, this is the last offensive line portal guy that they're going to take. But when you take back-to-back 5 scholarship lineman classes and you have Wisconsin, the tradition, offensive, everything that goes into that, you have 2 guys dedicated to the position. I think they want to avoid the portal as much as you possibly can. And really, they kind of added their portal guys with Malman and Renfro, if you want to consider that. I mean, that's kind of what you would have got in the portal. To be able to retain them really changes the outlook of the entire position group because, you bring back Brunner, potentially slide Ben Schwall in there, and then you have a guy like Hayward as the bookend projected left tackle of the future. So that looks awfully better now with Renfro and Malman there. And like you talked about, Matt, it likely keeps you from having to go to the portal. Although if a guy that makes sense comes along and he wants to play at Wisconsin, they're certainly going to kick the tires there and do their due diligence.
Yeah, especially I see sort of Leighton Nelson as the swing tackle behind Haywood and Malman, probably. But the young guys, they like a lot of the young guys, and we'll see how some of those guys really shake out. I know they're high on Coverly, they're high on Emerson Mandel, so I'm curious to see how those guys perform. And I think a lot of people at this point just want to see the kids play. Just let the young guys play. Let's see what happens because, the results from the first 2 seasons with the veterans really didn't bring a lot of what was expected, John. So moving forward, no bowl practices this year for the team, just a lot of lifting. And I wouldn't want to be in the weight room with an angry Brady Collins personally, but that's just me. Maybe some guys really like that. Personally, I would be a little bit intimidated to be in the weight room because I think things are going to be pretty intense these days in the lifting facility and in meeting rooms. I'm just sort of curious, John. Let's take a step back and look big picture before we wrap up here. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is next season for Luke Fickell?
9, because I would say year 4 is probably a 10. I think as of right now, I think Fickell gets to year 4. I know that people may be lining this season up as a boomer bust type season. I think there's too much invested into Luke Fickell that regardless of how this season goes, he's going to be on the chopping block. And look, maybe they turn it around. Maybe they figure things out. I mean, they have a very challenging schedule, at least what you would think is a very challenging schedule right now. I just think that he gets to year 4 because of financial reasons, because of athletic director reasons, and the connection that is there. Chris McIntosh isn't going to be quick to pull the plug there because that's his hire. That's who he chose. And he turned his back on Jim Leonard, who is the golden son of Madison. I don't know a different way to put it, but and you turn your back on Jim Leonard, you turn your back on a lot of other people as well as a result. And look, he made that decision. He has to live with that decision. But I do think Fickell gets to year 4, regardless of how year 3 goes. I don't want to paint it as year 3 is going to be this terrible year, but the roster needs a lot of work, and it's going to be a tough schedule. And
tough schedule is an understatement. It's one of the toughest schedules in the country next year.
Right. The only part of me, and I think maybe we said this last week, is that an above average quarterback, I think, cleans up a lot. Not everything, but a lot. And if you can put someone in there and they can stay healthy, that helps considerably moving forward. So that's why the quarterback's coach and who they get in the portal, that has to hit, and that has to be the right person. And then hopefully in year 4, maybe you're turning to Mabry, or maybe you're turning to Carter Smith, or maybe the guy that you bring in has another year of eligibility. They have to get that one right, because everything else kind of falls. The dominoes fall after that quarterback position. And so hopefully you correct that, and hopefully the guy stays healthy too.
Well, however the dominoes fall, we'll be here to talk about it on Badger Blitz TV. Please make sure that you are subscribing to BadgerBlitz.com for all of the most up-to-date and best information anywhere in the Badger universe, the best message boards anywhere around. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Please like, subscribe, rate, review, unsubscribe, resubscribe, re-rate, re-review, wherever. On YouTube, obviously, that's where we are at the moment. But we appreciate you tuning in. And until next time, we'll see you in the den.